The day started not with one of the state's witnesses, but an animated computer model of the Avery property, and then the hotly anticipated cross-examination of Bobby Dassey.
Good morning, welcome back.
Good morning.
Did you grow up on the salvage yard that you described living at yesterday?
Just my high school years in school.
That is, you were living with your mom?
Yes.
It was Barb Yonda.
Yes.
And Thursday morning may have marked the only time this trial a witness will be questioned about roadkill.
When did you get this deer?
That night.
And how long, or how did you get the deer?
It was a roadkill. It was hit right up the road from our house.
Now, when you get a roadkill, you can't just take that home and eat it necessarily, can you?
No.
You got to get a tag in this state?
Yes.
From the DNR?
Yes.
You had not hit the deer?
No.
But you saw it hit?
Yes.
And knew it was a fresh kill?
Yes.
So you put it in your truck?
Yes.
Brought it home?
Yes.
That exchange established the date Dassey's exchange with his uncle Stephen Avery took place, in which Avery jokingly asked him and his friend Mike Osmundson if they'd like to help him hide the body. On cross-examination, Dassey clarified.
Your uncle Stephen walked over to the garage?
Yes.
Came in? He and Mike had some conversation?
Yes.
You didn't catch the first part of the conversation, I gather.
Yes.
That is, you did not catch?
No, I didn't.
So you don't personally know whether Mike started the conversation or Steve did?
No, I don't.
What you caught was Steve making a joke about, want to help me get rid of a body or dispose of a body, something like that.
Yes.
That was clear to you it was a joke.
Yes.
Mike laughed.
Yes.
You laughed.
Yes.
And Steve followed that up by saying something like, people go missing all the time, and this girl may have left for Mexico.
Yes.
Did you guys laugh about that, too?
Yes.
Was this the first you learned that Teresa Halbach was missing?
Yes.
But one or both of them, from the conversation, had seen it on TV.
Yes.
The parties stipulated to what testimony Mike Osmundson would give about this conversation if he was called to testify, and defense attorney Dean Strang read this to the jury.
A man named Mike Osmundson would testify that he stated he and Bobby were inside the Dassey garage when Stephen came over. Michael indicated he was aware Stephen was one of the last people to see the missing girl, and jokingly asked Stephen if Stephen had her, the missing girl, in a closet. At this point, Stephen asked Michael if Michael wanted to, quote, help bury the body, close quote, and they laughed about this together. Mr. Osmundson once again indicated he thought Stephen might have been the last one to see the missing girl.
Mr. Kratz, is that the state's understanding of the stipulation?
It is, Judge.
Very well, members of the jury, based on that stipulation, you may accept the facts read by Mr. Strang as evidence in this case.
After that, Judge Willis told the jury they wouldn't be allowed to ask questions of witnesses.
Members of the jury, before we begin with the first witness, I have a statement I wish to read to you. The court has received a request from a juror that the court ask an additional question of the last witness. The court appreciates the jury's interest and attentiveness in this case, but in criminal cases, the court does not permit jurors to submit questions to witnesses for a variety of reasons. In our adversary system, it is the duty and responsibility of the attorneys for each side to ask the question.
The state's first witness of the day was Calumet County Sheriff's Lieutenant Brett Bowe, who took charge of the crime scene.
Tell the jury how you first became involved, please.
I was contacted Saturday night and asked to come to the scene to assist with taking control of the command post.
What is a command post?
It's a central location in a crime scene that we utilize for staging and organizing the activities that we're going to carry out during the day.
Before Calumet County authorities arrived to take over the investigation, the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, which was being sued by Stephen Avery over his wrongful rape conviction in 1985, was in charge. Deputy Peter O'Connor was the first law enforcement officer on the scene after Halbach's car was found.
Deputy O'Connor, to your knowledge, were you the first law enforcement officer of any county to arrive at that scene?
Yes, I was.
Do you observe any other law enforcement officers arrive at that location?
A short time later, probably within a couple of minutes of my arrival, Sergeant Orth of our department arrived, followed shortly thereafter, probably by a minute or two, by Lieutenant Herman.
Sergeant Jason Orth and Lieutenant, now Inspector Todd Herman, also testified on Thursday, but afterwards in the daily press conferences, all of the attention was on the cross-examination of Bobby Dassey. Teresa Hallbach's brother Mike said Avery's attempt at a joke was in poor taste.
It certainly wasn't a funny joke, and not something I would have said myself, and I don't think most people wouldn't have said it. So, whether it was said or not, I believe it was said because Bobby Dassey testified that it was said. So, yeah, it wasn't funny, and certainly I think it hurts the defense.
Meanwhile, defense attorney Jerome Budig had a different take.
None of these three people at that time thought there was anything more than a missing person investigation. They didn't expect that it would end up with such a tragic ending, and that in hindsight now it made this off-color joke look cruel when it was, I don't think, anyone's intent, certainly that night, for it to be that way. And that's what we tried to put back in context with the testimony today, hopefully laid that to rest.
Recapping Day 4 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan O'Donnell, News Radio 620 WTMJ. The first week of testimony wrapped up on Friday, first by going to the dogs.
Tell the jury, if you would, please, what, if any, involvement you were asked to have in the search for Teresa Hallbach.
I'm with Great Lakes Search and Rescue Canine, and I handle a search and rescue dog. And we were asked to come and help with the search for Teresa Hallbach.
Julie Kramer's dog Brutus sniffed out Teresa Hallbach's car in the Avery family scrapyard.
So we first checked the car crusher here. We worked up here, and then there was a line of cars up along a ridge. That's actually kind of an elevated ridgeway, and they asked us to clear that group of cars next.
And did you and Brutus do that?
Yes, and in that area, Brutus did give a trained indication. It was a vehicle that was underneath some brush, and there was a blue tarp there, and he did indicate, he went to this vehicle very quickly. He came back to me, he sat and gave his trained indication, which was a bark. I asked him to show me again. He went back to the same vehicle and barked and returned to me again.
On cross-examination, she admitted that Brutus does occasionally make mistakes, but not very often.
A false negative would be when, for example, as a matter of a training exercise, you know, or someone knows, because usually this would be done blind to you, correct?
Correct.
If you're handling Brutus. But someone who has set up the training exercise knows that there is a scent source on which the dog has been trained, correct?
Correct.
If the dog covers the area in which the scent source is hidden, but fails to give an indication or alert, that would be considered a false negative.
Correct.
In other words, the dog missed it.
Yes.
And that was a mistake because we know it's there.
Right.
All right. What is, or now doesn't matter so much, but as of November 5, 2005, what was Brutus's rate of false negatives?
Brutus's rate of false negative would be very low. I would have to refer to a lot of logs because of it's about 6,000 hours of training. He very rarely has missed a source. I can't say never, but very rarely.
The state's next witness was one of the lead investigators into the Hallbach disappearance, Special Agent Tom Fossbender.
With the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation.
As lead investigator or as one of two individuals assigning responsibility to allocate all of these resources that we're talking about, could you describe what Manitowoc role was contemplated to be?
Yes, it was decided that they would assist in the investigation in a support capacity or an assistance capacity. It was their county. They knew the resources. They had the contacts for such things as record services, implement dealerships if we need equipment, and various other things that came up, many other things that probably came up during this this investigation on scene.
The defense's cross-examination focused on determining what role two Manitowoc County Sheriff's officers, Lieutenant James Lenk and Sergeant Andrew Colburn, played in this investigation, which took place just weeks after they were deposed in Stephen Avery's wrongful imprisonment lawsuit against the department.
Now, when you came into this case, you, I assume, were not considering the possibility that some law enforcement officer would actually plant evidence against Mr. Avery, were you?
No.
Have you ever encountered a case where you've had to deal with that issue?
I worked in public corruption for 12 years with white-collar crime, and planting evidence, I don't believe I've ever had a police officer do that.
All right, so when you came to the scene, your focus was not on making sure that no police officer would do something that bad, like plant evidence, right? That wasn't part of your focus when you arrived.
Certainly.
Okay.
After Agent Fossbender's nearly 4 hours on the witness stand, the state called William Brandis, who found the license plates that had been removed from Teresa Halbach's car.
I was just walking along. I was actually on the driver's side searching, and there were a bunch of weeds. We crawled through the weeds and looked in, and I peered in the back, and behind what would be the passenger side seat, the back seat was folded down flat, and behind the passenger side seat was a set of what ended up to be license plates, but at that time were folded like in folded twice inwards, so you could not see the number or the anything on them.
Once Brandis found those plates, he verified them with Wisconsin State Patrol Trooper Cindy Payne.
And he said that it was the license plate we were looking for, and he had pointed it out to me.
Did you look at the license plates?
Yes, I did.
After the day's proceedings, Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz reflected on this first week of testimony.
It was a long week, obviously. It was a week that started with what I hoped was a clear prediction of what the evidence was going to show.
Recapping Day 5 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan O'Donnell.
At this time, the court calls State of Wisconsin versus Stephen Avery, case number 05-CF381.
And the second week of testimony started with John Ertl.
I work for the State Crime Laboratory in Madison. I'm a forensic scientist. I work for the DNA analysis unit, and I also do crime scene, evidence, location, recovery, and collection.
Ertl told the jury that he analyzed a substance that investigators found in Stephen Avery's trailer and determined that it was blood.
Let's start with Stephen Avery's residence. What, if anything, did you find there that had previously not been examined or determined or observed?
There were some visible blood stains on the couch that we had previously not found, that we found with luminol. Other than that, there was nothing that we hadn't already seen.
And when you found these stains on the couch react to the luminol, what did you do?
Circled them in chalk, then we looked at them, and they were obviously red-brown color, but within the pattern of the couch material, we hadn't seen them previously. So we took cuttings of the couch material, collected the stains.
But on cross-examination, Ertl admitted that he was never asked to enter the trailer and instead took pictures outside.
And so there's no reason why Mr. Fossbender couldn't have used you and Mr. Zahn to search Mr. Avery's residence on Saturday night instead of the people that he did use, right?
He could have.
And you actually have a master's degree, right?
In molecular biology.
Okay.
Yes.
And years of experience as a crime lab field response analyst, right?
Yes.
And instead, Mr. Fossbender had you going around and taking photographs and looking through garbage. Isn't that right?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained to the form of the question.
Then the jury heard from Manitowoc County Sheriff's Patrol Officer David Siders, who testified that he found fragments of Teresa Halbach's cell phone in a burn barrel on the Avery property.
And when you looked inside of that burn barrel, can you tell us what you saw, please?
Inside the burn barrel, I saw
a lot of ashes, and I saw a lot of burnt, melted plastic parts. As I looked closer at these plastic parts, it appeared to be parts of a cell phone that were actually melted inside the burning barrel.
Once it was determined that the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department had a conflict of interest because of Stephen Avery's lawsuit against it, Calumet County Sheriff Sergeant William Tyson took over securing the crime scene.
At some point were you made aware that security for the RAV4 and for that general area of the Avery property was to be either coordinated or taken over by Calumet County?
Yes. Sergeant Tyson said he knew exactly why he was taking over, and he testified that Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputies were completely professional throughout the investigation.
November 5th of 2005, and in fact that entire week, that you worked specifically with Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn, did you witness anything from either one of those law enforcement professionals that in any way questioned either their reliability or their ability to perform their law enforcement duties on that scene?
No. Because of time constraints, Monday afternoon, the defense put off cross-examining Sergeant Tyson until Tuesday. Recapping Day 6 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan O'Donnell, News Radio 620 WTMJ. The seventh day of testimony started with the cross-examination of Calumet County Sheriff Sergeant William Tyson, who supervised Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputies after it was determined that they had a conflict of interest because of Stephen Avery's wrongful conviction lawsuit against the department.
So of the 4 officers in that little trailer, only the Manitowoc officers were the ones actually doing the searching, right?
Correct.
You were doing the watching, right?
I was doing the documentation.
And the watching, right?
Yes.
You never let them out of your eyesight, did you?
I cannot sit up here and look at you guys and tell you that 3 hours inside that residence that I didn't turn my back, walk away, glance away. So I can't say that every second of the close to 3 hours, I was making direct eye contact with them or watching every move they made.
Tyson testified that what he did see throughout the investigation was the officers he supervised behaving professionally.
And you were also trying to abide by the directive that Manitowoc officers should not be alone in any of this property, right?
It was more of a documentation type thing. I mean, I did not treat these guys like I did not trust them.
The state's first witness of the day was one of those officers under Tyson's supervision, Manitowoc County Sheriff Sergeant Andrew Colburn, who vehemently denied planting evidence against Stephen Avery, as Avery's defense alleged during its opening statement.
Have you ever planted any evidence against Mr. Avery?
That's ridiculous. No, I have not.
Have you ever planted any evidence against anybody in the course of your law enforcement career?
I have to say that this is the first time my integrity has ever been questioned, and no, I have not.
On cross-examination, the defense made no mention of planting Avery's blood at the scene, leading Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz to object.
Now, we've heard Mr. Strang's opening statement, where planted evidence has been alluded to. We've heard cross-examination of other law enforcement witnesses by Mr. Buting, I know specifically, where he asked whether those officers expected that their superiors would be planting evidence in this case. But now, when it would logically come up in the trial, now when evidence would logically be presented, or when the very witness in the defense offer of proof comes before this court and is able to be asked regarding sneaking into the clerk's office or stealing a vial of blood or planting evidence, we hear nothing.
But defense attorney Dean Strang countered by saying,
we haven't gotten to the defense case in chief yet at all. We're in the prosecution case in chief. So all of this at some level would be wildly premature. But beyond that, to confront it most directly, I'm idealistic. I'm certainly naive at times, but I am not so naive to think that someone who may have planted blood evidence, who may have been involved in planting a key, would come into this courtroom and simply because asked under oath, did you do it, say, oh yes, I did. We are not going to have a Perry Mason moment.
Judge Patrick Willis ruled that the sides will be able to present their cases in an admissibility hearing before the end of the state's case. Once that was cleared up, the state called its next witness, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Lieutenant James Lenk.
Lieutenant Lenk, any time on the 5th of November, did you have any contact with Teresa Hallbach's SUV?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you have any contact with her SUV on the 4th of November or the 3rd of November, or in fact any time there before?
No, sir, I did not.
Because of time constraints, the prosecution wasn't able to finish its direct examination of Lieutenant Lenk on Tuesday. It will wrap it up on Wednesday. Recapping Day 7 of the Stephen Avery trial, Dan O'Donnell, News Radio 620 WTMJ.